So hello guys and welcome to this video where we will talk about the functions of the different lobes of the cerebral hemispheres and how to clinically assess them in case of dysfunction. So without further ado, let's get started. So what is the importance, that is why we should know the different lobar functions? 1. They'll help you to localize the lesions of the cerebral cortex. 2. They help you to understand that in a particular disease process, which lobes of the cerebral cortex get involved. And 3. In patients of CVA, they can provide a clue to the probable artery involved. This is because the different arteries that are supplying the brain have a particular vascular territory. And whenever any artery gets affected, then the functions of the cerebral cortex in the region of the vascular territory also gets involved. And therefore, they can help you to localize that which particular artery is involved in the patient. Now talking about the lobes of the cerebral cortex. How many lobes and what are the lobes of the cerebral cortex? The cerebral cortex has got 4 lobes. Frontal lobe anteriorly, posterior most being the occipital lobe, parietal lobe, and the inferior lobe or the temporal lobe. The central sulcus of the brain divides the cortex into the frontal lobe anteriorly and the parietal lobe posteriorly. The lateral fissure of the sylvian sulcus divides the brain matter into the frontal parietal lobes superiorly and the temporal lobe inferiorly. Whereas the posterior most, the occipital lobe, is separated from the parietal lobe by the parieto-occipital sulcus and from the temporal lobe by the preoccipital notch. Now, what is the concept of the Brodmann areas? Brodmann studied the functional areas of the brain. He found out that different regions of the brain carry different functions and he delineated them into a map where he gave those areas even different numbers. Those areas now are named after his name, which are called as the Brodmann areas, and they're still called by the numbers that he assigned to them. So now talking about the functional areas of the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is the main motor cortex, or it's the motor cortex. It has got the primary motor area, which is area number 4, that provides the origin to the corticospinal or the pyramidal tract and is responsible for the execution of movements. If there is a destructive lesion in the primary motor area like an ischemia or a hemorrhage, then it results in paralysis. Whereas if there is an irritative lesion such as a tumor, abscess, or any other space occupying lesion, then the patient presents with seizures. The premotor area is area number 6, which provides the origin to the extrapyramidal tract. It is responsible for planning and sequencing of the movements. And if there is a dysfunction of the premotor area, the patient presents with limb kinetic apraxia. The apraxia is inability to perform a skillful task without any motor deficit. Patients of limb kinetic apraxia are unable to perform activities with their limbs, that is the hands and the feet, in spite of having the motor system completely intact. For example, they cannot button unbutton their shirt, they cannot write holding a pen in their fingers, and so on. It also has a micturition area, which is the paracentral lobule. The paracentral lobule is located in the medial part of the frontal lobe, and its function is to provide the social inhibition for micturition. If the micturition area becomes dysfunctional, then the patient presents with incontinence or loss of the social appropriateness for micturition. Now the other functional areas includes the Broca's area, which is the motor speech area, the Brodmann's area 44 and 45. It is located in the inferior frontal gyrus and is responsible for word formation. If the Broca's area becomes dysfunctional, then the comprehension of the patient is intact, but the fluency or the outflow of the speech becomes reduced, which is also called as a telegraphic speech, and this is Broca's aphasia. It also houses the supplementary motor area, which is involved in assumption of a posture and inhibition of the primitive reflexes like sucking reflex and grasping reflex. If this area gets involved, then Mersenne sign becomes positive and palmomental reflex becomes positive. The frontal eye field is the area number 8, which helps in conjugate gaze, and if this area becomes dysfunctional, there is conjugate palsy in the patient. And lastly, is the prefrontal area, which is divided into dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and the orbitofrontal cortex. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is involved in executive functions, whereas the orbitofrontal cortex will mediate the emotions and civic sense. Therefore, in lesions in the prefrontal cortex, the patient presents with loss of executive functions like difficulty in picking up paper, folding it, making an appointment on time, etc., and also antisocial behavior due to involvement of the orbitofrontal cortex. Now talking about the Mersenne sign. The patient is made to sit with his eyes closed. and the examiner taps on the forehead of the patient in between the two eyebrows. Upon tapping 5 or more times, the patient repeatedly blinks, which is termed as Mersenne sign positive. In palmomental reflex, the examiner scratches over the palm of the patient. And if the reflex is positive, then there is a contraction or movement of the ipsilateral angle of the mouth due to contraction of the orbicularis oculi muscle. Both the palmomental reflex at the Mersenne sign becomes positive if there is damage to the supplementary motor area. Now talking about the functional areas of the parietal lobe. The parietal lobe houses the primary sensory area, that is area number 312. It is involved in localization of crude sensations, pain, touch and temperature, and perception of fine sensations like vibration and proprioception. The sensory association areas include area number 5 and area number 7. They are involved in the cortical sensation, that is 2-point discrimination, stereognosis, and graphesthesia. If the sensory association area gets involved, then there is loss of the cortical sensations. Additionally, it also houses the test area, the superior optic radiation, and the angular gyrus. If the test area gets involved, then the patient presents with abnormal test sensation called as dysgeusia. And if the superior optic radiation gets involved, then the patient presents with a visual field defect, that is contralateral inferior hemianopia. Now, how to assess the cortical sensations? This test is called as the 2-point discrimination. In this, the patient is asked to close his eyes and 2 points on the patient's body are touched. They are most commonly tested over the fingertips or over the lips. You can use a compass as has been shown in this diagram, or even 2 nails can be used, and they are touched separately over a particular body part of the patient, and he is asked whether he has been touched at 1 point or has been touched at 2 points. Now this is what is stereognosis. Stereognosis is the ability to identify an object by its shape, texture, etc. without even seeing it. In this also, the patient is asked to close his eyes and the examiner places an object over the palm of the patient. Just by touching it, the patient has to guess what object has been provided to him by the examiner. And this is the last one, which is the graphesthesia. In graphesthesia, the patient has to identify a word or a letter that has been pressed on the surface of the skin without looking at it. Now talking about the angular gyrus. The angular gyrus is located in both the parietal lobes, the right and the left. However, both of them have different functions. Therefore, the dysfunction of the features of angular gyrus dysfunction can help you to localize that which half of the cerebral hemisphere is involved. Is it the left half or the dominant lobe, or is it the right half or the non-dominant lobe? So the left angular gyrus is storing images associated with reading, calculation, naming of fingers. And if this area gets involved, then the patient presents with a constellation of clinical features called as the Gerstmann syndrome. It includes dysgraphia, that is difficulty in reading, writing, dyslexia, that is the difficulty in learning, acalculia, that is the difficulty in performing simple calculations, finger agnosia, in which the patient is unable to identify his thumb, middle finger, ring finger, etc., and right to left confusion. The right angular gyrus, however, has different functions, and if it gets involved, the patient presents with anosognosia, that is unaware he has got a neurological deficit. Dressing apraxia, in which the patient is unable to dress himself or herself. Constructional apraxia, in which the patient presents with inability to copy simple geometrical patterns like a star or a cube. Geographic agnosia, in which the patient easily gets lost and is unable to find his own bed in the house. And lastly, the hemispatial neglect, in which the patient ignores one half of the space. This is a picture showing the dressing apraxia, in which the patient is trying to fit in a shirt but does not know that he has to put his hand and instead inserts his or her feet by mistake. Now, how to test for finger agnosia? There are 3 techniques: 2-point finger test, homologous finger test, and finger strip test. In 2-point finger test, the patient's eyes are closed. The fingers of one hand are touched in 2 places by the examiner, and the patient has to judge whether they are both on the same finger or different fingers. In homologous finger test, the finger on one hand is briefly touched by the examiner, and the patient is asked to move the same or the homologous finger on the opposite hand. In finger strip test, the patient is just asked to arrange the strips of paper carrying the names of the fingers in the order. Now, how to assess fingers features of right angular gyrus dysfunction? The examiner gives the patient to copy simple figures like a star or maybe a clock as has been shown in the picture, and the version of the patient is what has been shown. This is termed as constructional apraxia, in which the patient is unable to copy simple geometrical figures. And these are hemispatial neglect, in which the patient ignores one half of the space. In the picture on the left, the patient has just shaved one half of his face and has not shaved the other because she neglects that half of the space. In the picture on the right, you can see that the examiner has asked the patient to draw a clock in which the patient has put all the numbers of the clock on the right half, completely ignoring the left half. So this is what is hemispatial neglect. Now talking about the functional areas of the temporal lobe. The temporal lobe is the house for the primary auditory area, area number 41 and 42. Its role is perception of sounds, and damage to this area is very rare, and the patient will present with feature of cortical deafness. Wernicke's area is the area number 22 and is involved in comprehension of speech. If the Wernicke's area gets damaged, then there is loss of comprehension, but the fluency of the speech is intact. As a result, the patient speaks a lot, that is, words hardly make any sense. And this is what is termed as Wernicke's aphasia. The patient has got a jargon speech and may even present with neologisms, that is, new words which are known only to the patient but not to the examiner. It also has the house of the inferior optic radiation, the olfactory area, and the medial temporal lobe. If the inferior optic radiation gets damaged, then there is a visual field defect which is contralateral superior hemianopia. Involvement of olfactory area is responsible for anosmia, and the involvement of medial temporal lobe is responsible for loss of short-term memory. Now, we must know how to test for visual field in the patient, and the common outdoor method is the confrontation testing. In that, as you can see in this picture, the doctor and the patient sits face to face. The examiner is asked to close one eye with one hand and to look straight at the doctor through the other. The doctor also closes the eye, the opposite eye of the doctor, such that the doctor is looking straight at the patient. Now the patient is instructed not to move his neck and to keep staring straight at the doctor, not even moving his eyes. The doctor brings his fingers from the periphery of the visual field towards the center, and the patient is asked to respond when he is able to see it. Now, based on the difference of time points in which the doctor can see the finger in his visual field and the patient can see the finger, visual field abnormality in the patient are assessed. And for this, the prerequisite is that the doctor must have a normal visual field. Now, what are the tests for short-term memories? There are many tests. Among them, two have been shown here. A very common is the digit span test, which can have two variants, digit forward as well as digit backward. Let us see an example, as has been shown in this picture. The doctor tells three digits 7, 4, 9. In a digit forward variety, the patient is expected to answer 7, 4, 9. Whereas if it is a digit backward variety, the patient has to answer 9, 4, 7. As the examiner gives us three digits, the patient has to register them in his brain and to speak them out. And this serves as a test for the short-term memory or the working memory of the patient. Another way to do it is the memory span test, in which a short list of digits or letters are read to the patient, and then the patient has to recite them in their original order. Now, what are the function areas of the occipital lobe? The occipital lobe is a lobe involved in vision. It houses the primary visual cortex, Brodmann's area 17, and the secondary visual cortex, Brodmann's area 18 and Brodmann's area 19. The primary visual cortex is involved in perception of an object lying in the visual field, and if it is dysfunctional, patients present with cortical blindness. Where the secondary visual cortex has two streams, the dorsal stream and the ventral stream. The dorsal stream arises from parietal lobe, which localizes an object in the visual field, and if it is damaged, there is a defect in visual spatial orientation. Whereas the ventral stream arises from the temporal lobe and interprets what the object is, and therefore if the secondary visual cortex is involved, the patient has difficulty in identification. So that's all for this video. Hope you enjoy it, and as always, stay tuned for more. Thank you.